A millionaire's luxury car broke down in the middle of a forgotten town. What he thought would be a short inconvenience turned into something life-altering. His 11-year-old daughter, out of nowhere, asked to stay and help in a stranger's kitchen. Then she said one sentence that nearly brought him to his knees. He thought he had control over everything, until she chose someone else. What happened next will leave you speechless. The black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided heavily over the rusty, bumpy dirt road like a misfit relic drifting through the vast, forgotten desert. Each wheel turned, kicking up thick clouds of dust that painted the sky a pale orange against the gray ash clouds. No streetlights, no billboards, just wind, crisp grass, and the uneasy silence of a town that seemed to have drifted out of time. The engine suddenly choked and died with a sharp beep from the dashboard, piercing the silence. Thomas Whitaker lets go of the steering wheel and sits up straight, his frustration etched into every line on his perfectly tailored face. He takes off his sunglasses and squints through the dusty windshield. Nothing. No gas station. No cars passing by. No signs of life in his early 40s. Dapper in a custom gray suit. Thomas steps out of the car, his Italian leather shoes immediately touching the red dirt. A rough welcome from this wilderness. He pulls out his phone and swipes the screen a few times, then sighs in disappointment. No signal. He mutters under his breath in a hoarse, contemptuous tone, "Damn GPS." Behind him, the back door creaks open, and an 11-year-old girl pokes her head out, her long blonde hair falling over her shoulders, ears still tuned to soft music from a glowing iPad. In a white princess dress with pale blue trim and spotless ballet shoes. Clara, his daughter, looks like she was plucked from a kid's clothing catalog and oddly dropped into this rural nowhere. She glances around with a detached gaze, born from a childhood in a penthouse where the only surprises come from touchscreens. "Dad, are we lost?" she asks, not out of fear but curiosity. "I thought you never got lost." Thomas doesn't answer. His eyes are locked on a warped wooden sign nailed to a withered tree nearby. "Welcome to Glendale. Population 431. He frowns. Glendale. He's never heard of it. The name sounds like something from a regional novel, not a digital map. A place that exists more in memory than in modern geography. No Uber, no gas station, no Starbucks. A slow suffocation creeps in under his stiff collar. The discomfort of a world without signals or solutions. He glances at his watch, then turns back to the car to grab the two shiny leather suitcases. Clara quietly follows, her iPad now still in her hand, as if even technology hesitates here. Not far ahead is an old wooden house converted into a diner. The sign above the porch, faded, reads with a strange mix of irony and charm, "Maple Pie and Kindness Cafe." The paint is peeling, but still readable. Thomas hesitates, then pulls the suitcases forward. Clara follows him, the hem of her white dress now stained brown from this unplanned adventure. The door creaks open. A gentle bell rings, not loud enough to stir the air inside. Cinnamon and coffee waft into their noses. Clara looks up, really looking around for the first time in weeks. This place is small, warm, maybe once a family home. A few locals sit scattered at tables, their eyes drifting toward the newcomers. Two figures dressed like they took a wrong turn from a Manhattan gallery. Opening up behind the counter is a woman in her early 30s, with chestnut hair tied back, a stained apron wiping the counter. She looks up, her gaze lingering not in surprise but with silent assessment. No one brings Louis Vuitton into a pie shop unless they're lost heading back to the city. "Hello there," she says, her voice as gentle as a breeze. "We have seats. Come on in." Thomas doesn't sit. He stands straight, nodding politely, but his eyes still cold and distant. His voice deep and formal. "Is there anyone here who can fix a Rolls-Royce?" The woman doesn't flinch. Her smile glides across her lips like a breeze over still water. "We fix pies, not Rolls-Royces exactly." Clara laughs, a clear laugh echoing in the silence, her iPad slipping into her dress pocket. Forgotten for the first time in weeks, Ava's eyes shift from Thomas to Clara, softening as she sets down the cloth and speaks slowly, like telling a bedtime story. "All I have is a plate, a kind heart, but if that's what you need, I can offer you a hot cup of cocoa." Thomas says nothing, but in that moment, in the silence and simplicity, Something in him shifts slightly off its usual path, just as Thomas and Clara step into the small diner. This place seems to wrap around them like an old blanket on a chilly day, nothing fancy. But somehow, just what you want to wrap yourself in, Clara sits at a long wooden table by the window, the last light of afternoon casting a pink glow on her cheeks. The table is scratched in places but spotless, with neatly stacked ceramic plates. Eva brings over 2 plates of eggs and toast, still steaming, along with hot cups of cocoa that smell rich and warm, as if they're whispering invitations. Thomas sits across from his daughter, his eyes fixed on a phone with no signal. He eats in silence, mechanical bites, his fingers occasionally hovering over the screen as if a meeting could somehow materialize in this Wi-Fi-less wilderness. Clara, on the other hand, holds her toast like it's a treat she's never known. She pauses over the edge of her eggs, inhales, and blinks in surprise. Eva, why do your eggs smell like real butter at home? We have a fancy stove, but it never tastes like this. Eva smiles, wiping her hands on her apron from behind the counter. Because I use real butter, not the low-calorie kind, and because I cook for hungry folks, it always helps. Clara ponders that, then smiles back, biting slower into the toast this time, wanting the flavor to linger after they finish eating. Eva approaches, her expression gentle but hesitant, like someone who's been thinking all afternoon. My house isn't big, she begins quietly. Just 1 bedroom and an old sofa. I'm afraid there's not enough room for 2. Thomas sets his coffee cup down. Frowning, he adjusts his sleeve with the precise motion of someone used to booking hotel rooms and upgrading suits. We're just looking for a hotel, he says, his voice short but polite. Is there anything nearby? Eva shakes her head slowly, not with rejection on her face, but something honest and gentle, a kind of truth that softens the room. There's no hotel here, she says, just homes and kindness. The silence that follows isn't awkward, but full. Something has shifted before Thomas can respond. Clara looks up from her cocoa, her voice clear and light, piercing the quiet. Eva, if I help you clean up, can I sleep on the sofa tonight? My dad and I won't be a bother. The words drop like a stone into still water. Thomas whips around toward her, surprised, opening his mouth to protest or remind her that things don't work that way. But Eva's eyes have already met Clara's. She leans in slightly, looking straight into the girl's eyes. No one says anything else right away. Just a slight nod from Eva, then very slowly, a smile. If you really want to help, she says. I couldn't say no. Clara jumps up, her chair squeaking lightly on the wood. She follows Eva into the kitchen, her white shoes now covered in red dirt, her dress dusted with faint flour smudges. As if she belongs here, if only for tonight. Thomas stays behind, one hand still gripping his coffee cup, the other holding his useless phone. He watches his daughter disappear into the back, her dress rustling, her blonde hair flowing like a candle flame, and realizes this is the first time he's seen Clara want to do something without expecting anything in return. Rain starts to fall, first as slow applause, then a sudden downpour outside the window. The outline of the Rolls-Royce blurs under the sheets of rain, its headlights reflecting a cold, fractured light. Thomas reluctantly stands, grabs the suitcases, and heads back to the car. He turns on the heater, adjusts the seat warmer, but the dampness still seeps in, finding gaps, as if the town itself wants him to feel its strangeness. A light knock on the window. Eva doesn't say a word. She just places an old wool blanket on the hood, then turns away without waiting for thanks or an explanation. Thomas watches her go, the woman offering warmth in a wooden house, not inviting him, but not turning him away either. After a deep breath, he opens the door and steps out, walking slowly inside, maybe not because of the rain, maybe because as if the town itself wants you to feel its strangeness, the strangeness of it, like a light knock on the window. Eva. She didn't say a word, just placed an old wool blanket on the car hood and turned away without waiting for thanks, without expecting an explanation. Thomas watched her go, that woman offering warmth in a wooden house that didn't invite him but didn't chase him away either. And after a long pause, he opened the door and stepped out slowly into the house. Maybe not just because of the rain, maybe because Clara had chosen to stay, And for the first time, he realized it might be time for him to learn to follow her lead. The morning came slowly, as if even the sun wasn't sure whether it should pierce through the faded earth-colored curtains of the wooden house behind the diner. A gentle quiet settled over Glendale, a town where life moves a half-beat slower than the rest of the world. Clara woke up early with no alarm, no car horns. She opened her eyes to the faint scent of freshly baked pastries and a hint of browned butter. She sat up slowly on the old plaid couch, now wrapped in the knitted cardigan that Eva must have left there sometime during the night. In the open kitchen behind the counter, Eva was already at work on the first batch of cinnamon rolls, her hands moving skillfully, flipping trays and brushing off flour, occasionally glancing at the blackboard by the window where Clara stood, holding a piece of white chalk, carefully forming round, bold letters, cinnamon rolls, maple glaze, $5 each. Eva stepped up behind her, adjusted the tail of the L, and nodded slightly. "No need to be perfect," she said gently. "Just honest." Clara chuckled, her eyes clear as a morning lake. "Then I should add a line. Something like, 'and you'll remember it forever.'" Eva laughed softly that one might cost $3. Footsteps echoed at the entrance. Thomas appeared in his shirt from yesterday, with a thin sweater now over it, his shoes wiped clean of dirt, his face unreadable. Weary, maybe, or just trying to reclaim something he lost between midnight and dawn. He walked to the counter, pulled out a crisp $100 bill from his wallet, and placed it neatly on the old wooden surface. The bill made a soft sound as it landed. "Thanks for your kindness," he said, looking straight into Eva's eyes, his voice calm and polished like the threads of a business deal. "I think this will cover the whole night." Eva paused. She didn't look at the money. She looked at him, her eyes steady, not angry, not offended, but unyielding. "I don't take money for kindness," she said, her voice gentle as rising steam. "But if you really want to repay me, the sink is waiting." The words fell like a crack on silent wood. Thomas froze, speechless. He had never been refused money, let alone offered to wash dishes in return. Clara inhaled the scent of fresh baked bread, her eyes lighting up. She ran over. "Oh, Eva, these loaves are better than any five-star hotel pastries. They're real, from the heart." That hit Thomas harder than he expected. For a moment, he felt like his own daughter was speaking. He was the man who took her to Michelin-star restaurants and glass-walled resorts. But that wasn't what made her eyes light up. He stepped back, uncertain. Clara stayed by Eva's side, chatting away, asking about the butter, the sugar, the exact moment when a loaf turns golden instead of burning. Thomas stood there in a world without Wi-Fi, no meetings, no assistance, and felt completely lost. He turned and walked out the door, the soft click behind him. Outside, the sky still hadn't decided, hovering between drizzle and gray. Thomas held up his phone, turning slowly in circles like a blind man feeling for light. But nothing, just the weak pulse of a signal icon that wouldn't wake. He sighed deeply, as if trying to release a helplessness he had never learned to control. In that foggy, quiet morning in an unnamed town, no one ever sought out Thomas Whitaker, the man behind 300 employees, signing millions in damn contracts from elevators to... He stood still, hands at his sides, uncertain of his place in the smallest company he ever had. Father and daughter. Have you ever felt abandoned, pushed to the edge with someone you love, just because you didn't know how to be there at the right time? If you're Thomas, what would you do when money isn't the answer anymore? Leave a no original content provided for this subtitle. No original content provided for this subtitle. Eyes light up. He stepped back. Not sure. Clara kept chatting with Eva, asking about the butter and sugar. The exact moment a loaf turns golden instead of burning. Thomas stood there in a world without Wi-Fi, no meetings, no assistance, and felt completely lost. He turned and walked out the door, the soft click behind him. Outside, the sky still hadn't decided, hovering between drizzle and gray. Thomas held up his phone, turning slowly in circles like a blind man feeling for light. But nothing, just the weak pulse of a signal icon that wouldn't wake. He sighed deeply, as if trying to release a helplessness he had never learned to control. In that foggy, quiet morning, in an unnamed town, no one ever sought out Thomas Whitaker, the man behind 300 employees, signing millions in damn contracts from elevators to... He stood still, hands at his sides, uncertain of his place in the smallest company he ever had. Father and daughter, have you ever felt abandoned, pushed to the edge with someone you love, just because you didn't know how to be there at the right time? If you're Thomas, what would you do when money isn't the answer anymore? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. The road stretched out endlessly, a ribbon of gray cutting through the green hills, but the sky above was clear, almost impossibly so, as if the previous night's rain had scrubbed the sky clean. Sunlight poured through the windows of the small bakery. No original content provided for this subtitle. 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 A comment below, because maybe your story could be the key for someone still lost as the sun sets over Glendale in the quiet velvet light. Gentle but not soft. It pours down on the faded wooden kitchen table, casting a pale, elongated glow. The shadows stretch like the day is slipping backward without anyone trying to stop it. In the small kitchen, Ava sits cross-legged on the floor next to a big bowl of potatoes. Clara lies right beside her, a flower on her shirt, her cheeks flushed from both the sunlight and laughter. She grips a clumsy peeler knife, peeling each potato with exaggerated flair. Each time the blade slips, she yelps dramatically, making everyone burst into little waves of laughter that echo through the narrow walls. Warm and unusual in a house that's usually so quiet. Thomas sits quietly in the corner, his phone still in his hand, but he hasn't looked at it for a while now. Its dark screen reflects his face back at him, faded, distant, and a bit unfamiliar. His eyes never leave Clara, not like a father looking at his daughter with affection, but like someone watching a world he no longer knows how to enter. Amid the giggles, Clara holds up a nearly peeled potato for Eva to inspect. Then, as if a question that's been silently waiting inside her for so long, she asks, "Why don't you move somewhere else?" "Aunt Eva, there's nothing here. Your house is small, your diner is tiny, and you're getting old." Eva smiles, not from sadness, just a quiet peace. Because when someone needs you, that's home. Clara goes quiet for a moment, then she turns to look at her dad for the first time. Not with admiration, but with something that feels like a quiet question. She says in a voice so gentle and clear, it surprises everyone, "Dad, do you think people can be loved not because they have money, but because they wash dishes, cook, and are there for others with their whole heart?" The room tenses up. The air thickens with emotion. Thomas opens his mouth, wanting to say something light, something reasonable, something that reminds everyone he's still the one who understands how the world works. But nothing comes out. Finally, he says in a voice that's trained but unsure, "You're still young. Honey, you don't understand everything yet." Clara doesn't laugh. She doesn't pout or react like a kid who's been corrected. She just sets the knife down, puts her hands on her lap, and looks at her dad with a sad expression. "No, Dad, you don't understand. I wish you were like Aunt Eva, kind without needing a reason. The words aren't shouted, they don't accuse, and that's why they hit so hard. They're simple, like a needle piercing the softest, most hidden spot inside him." Thomas suddenly stands up without saying anything, without looking back. The door opens without a sound, but a cold wind blows in, making it feel like a part of the room has vanished with him. Clara bows her head, quietly picking up the knife again, but now the peels are uneven, her small hands a bit off rhythm. She doesn't cry. She doesn't need to cry. Eva knows that when a child starts feeling disappointed in the person they once idolized, it doesn't always come with tears. The night grows thicker than usual inside the small wooden house. The kitchen light still burns like a flame trying to hold on to something that's at risk of fading. Clara curls up on the sofa with a small notebook on her lap, writing carefully with a purple pen. Eva has gone to bed in the kitchen, the sink full after a day of living, with plates stained with sauce and foamy cocoa mugs, a potato peeler still unwashed, footsteps barely audible. Whispering. Thomas stands in front of the sink, the overhead light casting soft shadows on his tired face, his shirt sleeves rolled up unevenly. He turns on the faucet and reaches for the first plate. No one asks him. No one notices. No one needs him to do it. That's probably why it means something. A bowl slips and falls, shattering with a sharp, sudden crash that rips through the silence like a knife through darkness. Thomas kneels down, carefully gathering the pieces, blood pooling on his fingertips, mixing with the water flowing from the tap. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't swear. He just keeps going. Bowl after bowl, plate after plate, as if trying to scrub away something deeper that soap could reach. His pride, his distance, the painful truth that maybe, just maybe, he'd lost Clara a long time ago, behind the half-closed door. Clara is still awake. She doesn't move. She doesn't call out. She just watches her dad in silence, her gaze steady, no longer the eyes of a child waiting to be guided, but of someone who's grown up a little in the span of a long night. The next morning dawns crystal clear, as if the previous night's rain had washed the sky clean. Sunlight floods the sky so clear it's almost unbelievable, as if the rain from last night had scrubbed the sky clean, with sunlight flooding through the window of the little bakery different. The sink is spotless, dishes dried and neatly stacked, towels hung carefully, as if a pair of clumsy but devoted hands had stayed up late till the dishes were dried, and neatly stacked towels hung carefully, as if a pair of clumsy but devoted hands had stayed up late into the night to do something no one asked for. No notes, no demands, just a quiet offer, and Eva smiled that rare smile of someone who's lost a lot and learned to welcome even the smallest acts of kindness with deep gratitude. Clara woke up. She tied her hair with a rubber band from an old drawer and put on one of Eva's oversized shirts as an apron. She sat next to Eva, carefully wrapping cinnamon rolls in brown parchment and simple twine. Those homespun bundles carried the warmth of goodness in every fold. Thomas stepped into the kitchen, his hair soaking wet, his new shirt on, his face calm but no longer on guard. He picked up a cup of coffee that Eva had brewed. "Clara, pack your things," he said, glancing out the window where the Rolls-Royce was now gleaming, as Dev wiped the dust off the repaired cars. "It's time to go." Clara looked up, her hands still busy tying knots. She narrowed her eyes a bit, as if weighing a thought more important than most. Then she said calmly and clearly, "I want to stay one more day." Thomas froze, the cup in his hand suddenly feeling heavier. The room seemed to stop with him. He looked at his daughter, the girl who once asked what the next stop was, now staring back at him, not challenging, not begging, just honest. "No," he said, steadily but firmly. "You know our schedule. We have reservations, meetings. Everything's planned." Clara didn't argue. She bowed her head and went back to tying the last knot, but her voice was gentle and steady, unshakable. "I don't want a vacation. I just want this. One more day." Thomas had never lost a negotiation with Clara, not because he demanded it, but because she had never cared about anything long enough to insist. He looked at her, then at Eva, quiet behind the counter, watching without pushing. She didn't say anything, but placed an empty paper bag in front of Clara. A small gesture, a quiet message if you need more time. "I'll be here with you." Thomas didn't know if it was Eva's look or the ache in his chest that hadn't faded, but for the first time, he didn't say no. He pulled out his phone, his fingers already moving to reschedule, delay, rearrange, but then he stopped. No signal. The screen flashed with the familiar indifferent message, "No service." A final reminder that in this place, his old world held no weight. Thomas stared at the screen, then slowly powered it off. No explanations, no disclaimers. Just for once, he simply stepped closer to Clara, gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "One day," he said softly, as if he'd finally learned the meaning of making room for others' voices, others' wishes. Clara nodded and continued folding the bags. Eva turned away, but her lips curved slightly. A father who hasn't lost his daughter over a mistake. He only loses her if he never learns to listen. The evening drifted over Glendale like a delicate mist, just there, but still leaving something behind. The last light of day retreated behind the hills, casting a warm, golden glow on the slanted roofs of the elm trees. The crickets in the diner had started chirping in the background. The garden sank into a slow, steady breath, like a town getting ready for bed. No more engines, no more phone calls, no more "we're running late." The three of them, a man, a woman, and a young girl, sat side by side on the creaky front steps, bathed in the soft light of a single porch lamp. On the table beside them, a plate of cinnamon rolls sat untouched, and 2 cups of hot cocoa. Clara hugged a small pillow to her chest, resting her head on Eva's shoulder. Thomas sat next to them, his hands lightly on his knees, not touching anyone but no longer distant. A gentle breeze brushed the edge of the porch, a silence that stretched wide and open, like the world itself was waiting for someone to speak. Eva didn't ask. No preamble. "I once had a bakery in Chicago," she said, her voice steady and emotionless. "With my husband. A small place, but always busy. We had a dream to open a second shop by the lake." Clara listened, her eyes fixed on Eva's face. "Then the accident happened. He died. The shop fell apart. I couldn't afford the rent. One night, I slept under a bridge, still smelling of flour and butter." No tears in her story, just long, honest pauses where the tale could breathe. Eva didn't look at them. She stared out at the trees, where the town's lights faded into the evening quiet, like ink seeping into paper. "But I got back up," she said, "because someone handed me a warm loaf of bread without asking my name. I came here where no one asks about the past. They just need me as Eva, the baker, the one they can trust." Thomas sat still. Inside him, something shifted. He had never told anyone that his mother died when he was 13 in a sudden car accident, just like Eva's husband. He'd never admitted that Clara wasn't born from love, but from a quiet contract between 2 people who no longer believed in it. He lowered his eyes, his voice hoarse. "So why don't you hate this world?" he asked. "Why didn't you break?" Eva turned to him, for the first time in 2 days. "Oh, I did," she said, her eyes steady and resolute. "But I choose kindness, because if I break, others might see me and break too." The silence that followed was complete. Thomas didn't respond. He took a deep breath, painful and full, and when he let it out, his eyes met hers for the first time, without walls. In that moment, the world felt a little lighter, like a burden shared. Clara reached out, her small hand finding his, and for once, through the breeze, the cricket's song, the gentle flicker of the porch light, the simple presence of it all. The next morning, Glendale wakes up slowly, as usual, but there's something slightly different in the air. The breeze is lighter, the sun hangs a bit higher in the sky, and in the Maple Diner's kitchen, something unusual is happening. No one says a word, they just quietly glide by, glancing at Thomas Whitaker, the man who once graced business magazines, now standing behind the sink with his white shirt sleeves rolled up, his hair a bit messy from skipping the gel, and in his hands, a ceramic plate still smeared with baking butter. Eva stands nearby, kneading dough, sweat glistening on her face, but her eyes keep glancing at Thomas like a teacher watching a new student struggle with their first spelling lesson. Clara sits at the counter, carefully writing the daily menu in white chalk. She presses each letter carefully. Homemade cinnamon rolls, crispy and warm, made with love. The clinking of spoons and forks, the scraping of chairs, and the soft slurping from Mr. Harry's oatmeal in the corner blend like a simple morning symphony, humble and familiar. Then it shatters, a bowl slips from Thomas's hand and smashes on the tile floor. The sharp crack tears through the silence, freezing the whole diner for a breathless second. Thomas freezes, his eyes wide, soap bubbles still clinging to his fingers. The tension hangs like a taut guitar string, and then from his corner table, old Mr. Harry, a regular for decades, lets out a booming laugh that fills the room. A billionaire in a Rolls-Royce breaking dishes like the rest of us, we're living in crazy times, aren't we? The diner erupts in laughter, not homemade cinnamon letters, crispy and warm, made with love, the sound of spoons and forks clinking, chairs scraping, and soft slurps from Mr. Harry's oatmeal in the corner blended like a simple morning symphony, humble and familiar. Then it shattered a bowl, slipped from Thomas's hand, and smashed on the tile floor. The sharp crack ripped through the silence, freezing everyone in the diner for a breathless second. Thomas froze, his eyes wide, soap bubbles still clinging to his fingers. The air tensed like a guitar string about to snap. Then, from his corner table, old Mr. Harry, a regular for decades, let out a booming laugh that filled the room. A billionaire in a Rolls-Royce breaking dishes like the rest of us, Jarvis. We're living in crazy times, aren't we? The diner erupted in laughter, not mocking, just genuine warmth, as if a stranger had become family. And once you're family, no one cares about a broken bowl. Thomas looked around, stunned. Then for the first time in years, he laughed. Not a polite laugh, not one for show, a freeing laugh. Ava stepped forward and handed him a clean cloth. She didn't say much. She just gently whispered, "Next time, I'll put a shatterproof sticker on every plate, just in case." Thomas took the cloth and bent down to pick up the pieces. His hands were a little shaky, but he didn't stop. Clara looked at her dad without saying a word, but her eyes sparkled with that look, no longer the man glancing at emails while she talked about school. Now, there was a real dad, someone who finally dared to be wrong, dared to stay, and dared to clean up his own mess. He kept washing the dishes, slower but steadier. No applause, no praise, but everyone seemed to notice and remember that moment. Thomas wasn't a millionaire stuck in a forgotten small town anymore. He was the first man in that diner who truly knew how to be wrong and fix it with his own hands. His quiet redemption outside. The sun rose higher, the aroma of freshly baked waffles drifting out to the street. The next morning, gentle sunlight glided over the wooden roof of the diner, casting slanted light on the wooden table still dusted with a few breadcrumbs from the day before. The diner hadn't opened yet, but in the kitchen, Eva had been up for hours. She was finishing the last batch of plates. Her hands glided over each plate with practiced grace, as if gently touching what remained of a peaceful day. The sound of the door behind her, it was Thomas. He no longer carried the air of a powerful man, but he wasn't exactly a better dad yet. He was just a simple man, humble enough to show up at the right time in the right way. He stepped in, holding a folded piece of paper with crumpled edges, as if he'd been clutching it all night. Without a word, he placed it on the table and pushed it toward Eva. She wiped her hands dry and unfolded the paper. It was a simple sketch, with shaky lines, a waffle glowing with rays of early morning light, and below it, handwritten words, Maple Light Bakery. "A little light in every waffle," Thomas said softly. "It's not an investment, not a partnership. Just, if you're planning to keep the lights on every morning, maybe this name will help people find it." Eva didn't reply right away. She stared at the paper for a long moment, then quietly tore it in half. Thomas froze, not angry, just unsure. Eva handed him one half, her eyes never leaving the other half. "Yours is the bakery. Mine is a promise. You'll keep yours if you know I'll come back for the other half." The air went still for a beat, then opened up like a gentle light blooming in Thomas's chest. He took the torn half without smiling, without promising, but his eyes had changed, softer now. Clara walked in and hugged Eva tightly. She kissed her on the cheek and nestled into her, like she'd found the safety she hadn't felt in a long time. "He was the first one who ever taught me how to do something not just for grades." Eva gently placed her hand on Clara's back, hugging her tight without saying a word. Dad and daughter headed to the car before getting in. Clara turned back. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight as she called out loud enough for the whole shop to hear, "I'll come back if Dad doesn't. I'll come back." Eva smiled and nodded. Thomas opened the driver's door and got in. Clara buckled up in the passenger seat, not in a hurry, not waiting, just the two of them together. The car rolled onto the red dirt road, the road he used to hate for being so outdated. But now it seemed more beautiful as the tires carried a piece of him. In Clara's hand was a warm waffle, the wrapping paper a bit crinkled from her grip. She leaned her head against the window, her eyes drifting into the space beside her. Thomas drove in silence. No music, No AC, no Bluetooth, just Clara whispering softly, like she was talking to herself or maybe to the dad she just met. "I'll miss this place, not because of the waffles, but because it's the first time I knew my dad could be wrong and still choose to stay." Behind the car, the light from the bakery glowed softly, warm, like a little lamp that never really goes out. No background music, no neat ending, just the steady roll of tires on the dirt and a quiet resonance. Unnamed, but one that'll last for a long time. This story reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected detours lead us exactly where we need to be. A millionaire, lost in a forgotten town, found more than just a broken-down car. He found a moment of truth, spoken from the heart of his own daughter. It's in these small, unplanned moments that we discover what really matters: connection, humility, and the courage to slow down and listen. If this story moved you as it did us, show your support for the father who dared to let go of control and truly see his daughter for the first time. What would you say to him? Should he stay in that town a little longer? Should he take the risk of building something real with his daughter? And maybe even the stranger who opened her heart? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in stories that touch the soul and remind us of our shared humanity, don't forget to subscribe to Touching Tales Hub. More heartwarming stories are waiting to be told, and who knows, the next one might just be yours.